Good morning, members of the jury. I'm able to start a little early, so that's probably good. Morning, Mr. Williams. Just a reminder that you are still under oath, and Mr. Frank.
Morning again, Mr. Williams.
Good morning, man.
And yesterday when we finished, we had a little abrupt end because of a question about the feed, and that's been worked out. So just to sort of revisit with you where we were when we left off yesterday, we had been going through that piece of video you identified for the jurors, things that you saw, particularly the shimmy moves that you saw. And so I want to move on then from that point and continue on with our questioning this morning, okay?
Correct.
All right. Now, while you were standing there watching this incident from the curb, were there things that you saw on Mr. Floyd's face that were significant to you?
Correct. Like I said before, you could see that he was going through tremendous pain, and you could see it in his face from the grunting. You could see his eyes slowly, rolling back in his head, and him having his mouth open, wide open, slowly with drool and slob and dryness on his mouth. And you can see that he's trying to, gasp for air, and trying to be able to breathe as he's down there, and trying to move his face, side to side so he can, I'm believing, okay. I'm assuming gasp for more air there. I'm not.
Okay, and as you were standing there seeing all this, how were you feeling?
As I was sitting there, I just was really trying to keep my professionalismness and make sure that I speak out for Floyd's life, because I felt like he was in very much danger, and I seen another man like me, being controlled in a way where.
Yeah, let me just.
This is. Yeah.
Stop. That answers the question. We'll ask another question.
And were you scared for yourself?
Yes, I was totally scared for my safety and people around me, and that's.
And so, did you feel like you could intervene in the situation more than verbally, more than speaking?
Not as much, no. As much as I wanted to, my energy didn't let me, and I was controlled on the curb. So I did as much as I can. Now
you, at some point, learned the name of the officer Tao who was standing there, correct?
Correct.
So when I ask about that, who I am referring to.
Correct.
And at some point, did you step off the curb and have an interaction with Officer Tao?
Yes, I did step off the curb and had an interaction with Officer Tao.
And what did Officer Tao do?
He proceeded to push his hand in my chest, swipe down, put my hands up, and I stepped back on the curb.
And did you make any further moves towards Officer Tao?
No further moves.
Okay. At some point, did a person come up and identify herself as a Minneapolis firefighter?
That is correct.
Did you know her before that day?
No, I did not know her.
And I think you said earlier she asked that they check his pulse?
That is correct.
And were there, other than you and her, other bystanders on the sidewalk there?
Yes, there were other bystanders on the sidewalk.
Did you hear any of them threatening the safety of the police officers?
No, I did not.
And at some point, did you help, in fact, restrain some of those individuals?
Correct. Once the situation got a little intense with someone who was going up behind me, I spoke to one of the gentlemen and told him that this is not the time or place for this right now, and then he proceeded to go back into the building.
So, did you know that individual?
No, I did not know the individual at all.
Did you, recognize him or know where he was from?
No, I did not.
At some point, did you ask him to go back in the store?
That is correct.
So you thought he had come from the store,
That is correct.
and after you told him to do that, what did he do?
He proceeded to go back in the store, and I believe he might have been escorted as he was crying back to the store.
So he never made another move towards the police officers?
That is correct.
Mr. Williams, the jury has heard some audio and video of this incident already when you were there, and you were using some pretty strong language.
That is correct.
You were raising your voice.
That is correct.
Why? Why for those, both of those?
For the fear of myself and fear of the people around me, and trying to just be able to talk to the officer and let him know that this should not happen. Just from being around different officers and working in that industry, I just never seen that, and I felt like I should speak on it, and I vocalized it.
What were the kind of emotions that were causing you to speak like that?
No feeling or no remorse or no response from the officer.
Hold on. Objection is non-responsive is sustained. Jury will disregard the answer from the last question. If you could be a little more precise in framing your question, Mr. Frank, I think that would help.
I certainly could, Your Honor. The emotions that you were feeling that caused you to use this kind of language in that tone of voice.
Yeah, the emotion that caused me to use this language in this voice was non-responsive from the officer.
Sustained. Disregard the answer.
So let me ask you this way. Were there things that you were seeing about the officers that also caused you concern?
Correct.
And what was that?
The non-response from the officer.
Okay. So that was something that was also affecting how you were feeling about the incident.
That is correct.
And so then that led into part of why you were raising your voice and using the terms used.
That is correct.
Were you present when the ambulance arrived?
That is correct.
Now, at any time during this interaction, did you see Officer Chauvin take his knee off of Mr. Floyd's neck?
No.
Okay. When the ambulance arrived, did he do that?
No.
And did you see a paramedic, an ambulance personnel check for Mr. Floyd's pulse?
Repeat the question.
Yep. When the paramedics arrived, did you continue to watch when the paramedics got out of the ambulance and checked on Mr. Floyd?
Yes, I did watch.
Did you see if they checked for Mr. Floyd's pulse?
I believe that they were attempting to go check for the pulse, and the knee was he was still on top of him. Did he check the pulse? I cannot recollect. I don't remember if he was able to even check his pulse, but I remember that.
How did you answer there? It was responsive to that point.
I think you've
Next
answered
question.
the question. Thank you. Now, when the paramedics loaded Mr. Floyd into the ambulance, were you still there at the scene?
That is correct.
All right. And after that happened, did you see what the officers did? Well, let me back you up a little bit. At some point, did you learn that there were more than those two officers at the scene?
That is correct.
When did you learn that?
Once the ambulance have arrived, I did notice that there was more than one officer, more than two officers on the scene.
And so where did you see, or how did you see these other officers?
Once they started to load Mr. Floyd onto the straddle, to not the technical name of it, but they put him onto the little bed thing.
The gurney or the stretcher?
The gurney, correct. Yes, yeah.
And then when they did that, you saw these other officers.
Correct. That's
Where had they been, or where did they come from?
They were on the bottom side of Floyd, or trying to get his feet on to the gurney, and yeah.
Then you were able to see them.
Correct.
All right. And after Mr. Floyd was put into the ambulance and the ambulance left, did you stay at the scene for a little while?
That is correct.
Okay, so right after the ambulance left, did you see where the officers went?
That is correct.
Where did they go?
They proceeded to cut to the other side, front of the store, which is 38th. Chicago's this way. So they proceeded to go towards 38th and proceed to go away from the scene.
And were you still in that same emotional mindset?
Yes, I was very lost at the moment, and I was very nervous and not knowing what to do. And yes.
And did you, in fact, stay around at the scene for a little while?
Yes, I did.
At some point, did you make a 911 call?
That is correct. I did call the police on the police.
Right. And why did you do that?
Because I believe I witnessed a murder.
And so you felt a need to call the police?
And I felt the need to call the police on the police.
Now, there were police there, right?
There were police there.
Okay. Why didn't you just talk to them about it?
I believe that they didn't. We just didn't have no connection. You know, I spoke to them, but not on a connection of a human being relationship.
Did you, believe that they were involved?
Yes, totally.
And so when you made that 911 call, about how long after the ambulance left was that?
Time recollection? I don't know.
Was it a matter of minutes?
Minutes, seconds. Not too long after they retreated to the other side of the street, I proceeded to call the police.
And prior to today, have you had an opportunity to listen to a recording of that 911 call?
Can you please repeat that question?
Prior to coming to court today, did we play for you a copy of that 911 call, a recording of it?
I will not say yes or no. I cannot remember at this moment.
Okay. If you heard that today, would you be able to recognize it as the 911 call that you made?
That is correct.
All right. We have now marked that as Exhibit 20, and Your Honor, we would ask that it be, we are offering it now as Exhibit 20.
And 20 is received.
All right, so if we can at this point, then play Exhibit 20.
May 25, 2020.
911, what's the address of the emergency?
Officer 987 killed a citizen in front of a Chicago store. He just pretty much just killed this guy that wasn't resisting arrest. He had his knee on the dude's neck the whole time. Officer 987, the man went, stopped breathing. He wasn't resisting arrest or nothing. He was already in handcuffs. They pretty much just killed the dude. I don't even know if he's dead for sure, but he was not responsible when the ambulance just came and got him. And the officer that was just out here left, the one that actually just murdered the kid in front of everybody on 36th, 38th in Chicago.
Okay. Would you like to speak with the sergeant?
Yeah, like that was bogus what they just did
Hold
to
on.
this man. He was unresponsive. He wasn't resisting arrest or any of it.
Okay, let me get you over to the desk. You can request to speak with the sergeant, okay? Stay on the
Yeah, and I'm sitting here talking with another off-duty firefighter that just sat here and watched it in front of us as well.
Okay.
And she told him to check the man's pulse, but they wouldn't even check the pulse.
Okay, 1 second.
I have reached the city of Minneapolis to reach someone in our property crimes division.
Y'all murderers, bro. Y'all murderers, Kyle. You gonna kill yourself. I already know it. 2 more years. You gonna shoot yourself. Murderers, bro. Y'all niggas is murderers, bro.
Minneapolis 3rd Precinct.
Hey, it's dispatch.
Yeah, man. So
Hold
I
on.
want to speak
There's
to
a-
the supervisor.
No.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, he wants to speak with the supervisor relating to 320's call cup food.
So they just killed that man in front of the store. The police.
2033-46, May 25, 2020.
Is that then an accurate recording of the call you made?
That is correct.
And at the beginning, you referred to Officer 987. Where did you get that number from?
Honestly, it was just visually popped in my head.
Okay.
Like I looked at his badge, and that's what I read on his badge.
And so whose badge, which officer were you referring to?
The officer sitting over there.
Okay. And was that also the officer that had his knee on George Floyd's neck?
That is correct.
And for the record, when your previous answer, you were pointing to the defendant, Mr. Chauvin?
That's correct.
And so the purpose in making, what was the purpose in making that 911 call at that time?
I just felt like that was the right thing to do. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know what to do. But
And-
call.
I'm sorry, I cut you off.
But call.
And the response then was to transfer you to a sergeant, correct?
That is correct.
And then at some point the call, it sounds like you're talking to Officer Tao. Do you recall if you were actually talking to Officer Tao at that point?
That is correct. I was, because I think at the moment, or I don't think at the moment that I was making the call, he proceeded to like intimidate me and stick his camera in my face, his body cam, and
Okay. And the call sort of ends abruptly. Did you hang up, terminate the call?
I'm not 100% sure, but I may have, because I felt threatened once our interaction happened in front of the store with me and Tao.
And then from there, after hanging up, did you stick around for a while and talk to some other people there?
Yeah, I wanted to do my own investigation.
Your Honor, I have no further questions.
Mr. Nelson.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Can I ask what you're looking at?
Just notes, that's all.
Okay. I'm going to ask that you put those to the side, okay?
Cool, thanks.
All right. Thank you for your patience. I'm going to ask that you put those to the side, okay?
Cool, thanks.
All right. Thank you for your patience yesterday. Thank you for being here this morning. I just have some follow-up questions for you, all right?
Yep,
You testified yesterday that you started wrestling in the 7th grade. Is that correct?
that is correct.
And over time, you were talking about how you learn how to control your body weight, right?
That is correct.
And one of the things that you kind of talked about was when early in your instruction in wrestling, you call it, I think, flow wrestling.
That's correct.
And as I understand that, and correct me if I'm wrong, flow wrestling is kind of learning how to kind of keep your center of balance, learning how to, sometimes it may feel you should use your arm when you should really use your leg. Kind of just learning how your body works, right?
Yeah, correct. Less resistance.
Less resistance. So sometimes less resistance is actually better in certain circumstances.
Repeat that.
Sure. I mean, if you're on the mat, right, and your instinct is to push your arm out to the side to try to use your body weight to roll, you may want to actually use your leg to roll the other way, right? Kind of like flow.
Kind of, but not really.
Okay, how would you describe just the flow of wrestling?
Flow is less. Flow is more. I'm flowing with you without using my strength. I'm flowing with you, going 50 60% of it. I'm flowing with you, letting you get into a half Nelson, and you feel the half Nelson, you're in it, and now you're flowing, your partner's letting you flow off your back and get into a position where you get into a stand up, into escape. Flow is where my partner's letting me get in on a double, and I'm letting him finish the double, and now I'm flowing into my offensive or my defensive position of getting away. So
Right.
different positioning.
Right. So you're learning how to use your body weight against the weight of the other person. You're learning how to just get in and out of moves, right?
Flowing.
Right. And that's something that you learned, at a young age in the sport of wrestling.
Correct.
And as you continued your wrestling career, you testified that you wrestled all the way through high school and then into college for a couple of years as well.
That is
right?
correct.
And you would agree that wrestling is a sport,
Wrestling's a lifestyle.
okay? There are rules, there are points, there are referees. So there's a sport to wrestling, right?
Correct.
And I understand as a wrestler, it's a lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
But to the kind of the casual observer, maybe it's just a sport, right?
Correct.
All right. But you're learning how to keep your center of gravity lower and grapple with people,
Correct.
right? And then you testified that after you kind of got out of college or finished your career in college, that you started moving more towards the mixed martial arts, right?
Correct.
And so you were training in jiu-jitsu, I believe you said?
That is correct.
All right. And again, jiu-jitsu is a form of martial arts, right?
Correct.
Lots of forms of martial arts, right?
Correct.
Judo, karate, Krav Maga. These are all various forms of martial arts that you have some general familiarity with, right?
Correct.
But your training is specifically in jiu-jitsu, correct?
No. I'm a martial artist. I train jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, stick fighting like I'm a martial artist. I don't just train jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
I stay in boxing, wrestling, all is put into one. So as a fighter, you're not just working on the ground game. You're working on your stand-up. You're working, your Muay Thai, your kickboxing, things like that. That's what a martial artist is.
Okay. So you incorporate several forms of martial arts into what you study.
That is correct.
All right. And again, the notion of a chokehold is very common within the martial arts community, right?
That is correct.
Submissions. And there are many forms, right?
Correct.
Like the triangle or the rear naked chokehold, all sorts of different types of chokeholds or submission holds that apply.
That is correct.
All right. And again, I understand that martial arts is a lifestyle, but there is a sport to it as well, right?
That competitive side too. Yeah, sports.
Right.
Correct.
And I'm just talking generally, I'm not talking about the MMA fighting yet, but just even as a martial artist, there are competitions with rules and referees and things of that nature.
That
right?
is correct.
All right. And whether you wrestle or you compete in the or in the martial arts, there are weight classes, right?
That is correct. Well, yeah, that's correct. MMA has weight classes. Jiu-jitsu tournaments, there's open weights. So you win your weight division, you have a chance to wrestle in open division, which usually if I'm competing in just a tournament, I'll do it in an open division, which is open weight.
All right. So again, generally, like looking at your career as a wrestler, what weight did you wrestle at?
I wrestled anywhere from 106 to 141 in college.
Okay. And when you would competitively wrestle, you would wrestle with other people who were in that same weight class, right?
Correct.
And then in the martial arts, in the competitions for the martial arts, there are weight classes, but there's also this open weight class, right?
That's correct for jiu-jitsu.
In jiu-jitsu, and so you, as a 141-pound guy, may wrestle or may grapple with someone who's 180 pounds.
Or 220, 210.
Right.
Never know.
Or 100.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
I mean, okay. But then about 10 years ago, you testified that you started with mixed martial arts.
Repeat that, please.
I believe that you testified yesterday that about 10 years ago, you began training in mixed martial arts.
Correct. Martial arts.
Yep.
Yeah, with like tennis.
MMA.
MMA, mixed martial arts. So.
All right. And maybe I'm confused, like, of your progression? So you go from wrestling to boxing to mixed martial arts?
So I went from wrestling in college to training in a martial arts school,
Okay.
which covers martial arts.
Okay.
Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, boxing, mixed martial arts,
Okay.
wrestling.
And because there are some, I mean, again, there are some businesses or gyms that will train in a specific form of a martial art, right?
Correct. You have some that just do box. You have boxing gyms. You have jiu-jitsu gyms. You have Muay Thai gyms.
Or Krav Maga
Or
whatever.
yeah, whatever, anything, stuff like that. You know, you have different specialty of martial arts for different schools. But some schools, one of the schools I was at, the Academy under Greg Nelson, he taught a variety of martial arts. It was a martial arts school.
Okay. I'm understanding now that you went from the wrestling to the mixed martial arts. And about 10 years ago, was it that you started competing in a mixed martial arts?
I started competing right away. I went from wrestling in college to being one of the top amateur fighters in the Midwest to finish, just growing as a martial artist. So I started, at a different gym before I got to the academy. I was a wrestler. I didn't know anything but wrestling, at the time. So I take people down and ground and pound. And then I switched to gyms and under Greg, and I learned more jiu-jitsu. I learned more kicking. I learned different elbows. I learned, different martial arts techniques, chokes, submissions, arm bars, things like that, spinning back fists, flying knees. I learned that.
Right. Okay. When we talk about an MMA fight,
Correct.
right? All of those various methods of fighting are employed in those fights, right?
Correct.
So if I am a boxer and I'm in a boxing match, right? I can't kick you, for example.
No.
But if I'm in an MMA fight, I may punch you, I might kick you, I might choke you, short of biting, right?
Correct.
And the point of a mixed martial arts fight is to actually knock the person out, render him unconscious, right?
That is correct. Control the cage, things like that.
You referenced the cage match, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we kind of think about when we think about mixed martial arts fights.
You got cage fighting, which you see UFC, Bellator, LFA, all things like that.